My husband surprised me one day by saying he wanted to use the $1 million I inherited to renovate our family home. He said with a grin. I was stunned, barely able to speak. My father had passed away, leaving me the inheritance, but I hadn't told my husband about it. I'd been considering divorcing him because he was too controlling, and I didn't want him knowing about the money since he was always greedy for it. But how did he find out? When I asked him, he confessed to threatening my mother to spill the secret. I couldn't believe his audacity. I fumed as I'd argue with my husband, but he just smirked and said, "Doesn't matter what you think. The deal's done. Your yelling won't change a thing." Now, I'm Caroline, 28 years old, working at a big bank. Always wanted to tie the knot, but my busy job didn't leave much time for dating. So I took a chance and signed up with a matchmaking agency. That's where I met Robert, a cheerful delivery driver a year older than me. In my line of work, I hardly meet any women. Meeting someone like you, Caroline, is like hitting the jackpot, Robert said, blushing. I feel the same way. It's wonderful to hear you say that, I replied. Would you go out with me? With marriage in mind, Robert popped the question. I said yes, and our love story began smoothly. We tied the knot 3 years back. At first, I thought we were a loving pair. I made more money than Robert, but he always praised me, saying, Caroline, you're amazing, such a career woman. But 3 years into our marriage, Robert's attitude changed. He started with sarcastic jabs like, must be nice, earning that big salary. And it wasn't just him. My once friendly in-laws turned cold. They used to be so sweet. Caroline, working at a major bank is impressive. You must have worked hard. We're thrilled our son married you, they'd say. Thanks. I'm lucky to have Robert, I'd reply. We're looking forward to having a great relationship with you, my mother-in-law would say, with a warm smile. At first, both my in-laws seemed so supportive, looking at us with loving eyes. Though issues with mothers-in-law are often talked about, I never thought it would concern me. But soon enough, their true colors showed. Caroline, you make good money, right? Give us some. I want a designer bag. It's not a big deal to help us out once in a while, my mother-in-law demanded, as if it were expected. But I just got you a dress for your birthday recently, and I don't lend or borrow money, even within family, I replied. They were furious when I refused. How dare you? We only agreed to this marriage because you work at a big bank. Truth is, we can't stand you. Sick of you always speaking your mind so clearly, my mother-in-law shouted. Exactly. What's the point of a daughter-in-law who won't give us money? Giving gifts for birthdays is expected. We're telling you to hand over cash. Even after we've asked so many times, you still won't give in. You're the worst daughter-in-law, my father-in-law scolded, backing up his wife. Robert simply nodded along with his parents' harsh words and didn't stand up for me. To add to that, he often splurged on takeout and expensive furniture without consulting me, saying, you make good money, so this should be fine. It wouldn't have been a problem if he used his own earnings, but his salary couldn't cover it all, leaving me to foot the bill. With the constant mistreatment from Robert and his parents, divorce started seeming like the only way out. Since we didn't have kids yet, I felt the decision wasn't as complicated, so I began preparing for the divorce. When I brought up the topic to Robert, he'd avoided it and refused to confront the situation. Divorce? I'm too tired today. I'm going to bed. He'd brush it off. Wait, Robert. We need to seriously discuss this today, I'd insist. But he'd ignore me and quickly retreat to the bedroom, persistently avoiding the conversation. I got a call from my mom during that time. Hi, Mom. What's going on? Listen carefully. It's about your dad. According to her, a recent checkup revealed that my father was sick and needed urgent hospitalization. Got it. I'll head to the hospital right away, I said, rushing to prepare. As I was getting ready to leave, Robert asked where I was going, and I explained about my dad's situation. But he just replied with a nonchalant Disappointed by Robert's lack of concern, especially considering it was about his father-in-law, I focused on going to the hospital without paying him any more mind. When I got there, I joined my mom to hear the doctor's diagnosis. Turns out my dad had cancer, and his time was limited. Both Mom and I were stunned. We debated whether to tell him the truth about his condition, but knowing he'd want to be fully informed, we decided to be honest with him. Returning home devastated, I was met with Robert's insensitive question. Back from your dad's hospital, huh? How bad is it? Despite my anger at his tone, I shared the grim news about my father. His response was callous. Oh, weren't you talking about divorce? If you want to stress out your already ailing father with our divorce, I'm up for it any time. His despicable comment plummeted my feelings for him even lower. But I didn't want to burden my father further. Despite Robert's smug claims about being ready for divorce, whenever we discussed it, he seemed even more pleased. With my workload and a desire to avoid divorce discussions, I focused on being there for my father. Avoiding the topic of divorce seemed like a victory to Robert, worsening his attitude. So, what about your dad's inheritance? How much are we talking about? I'm his son-in-law, so I should get a share, right? Can't wait? Robert asked eagerly. That's ridiculous. My dad is still alive. How can you even bring that up? Shut up. Don't raise your voice at me. No matter how much I objected, Robert seemed unaffected. His constant speculation about what he might get after my father's passing disgusted me. So, I started staying at my parents' house. I told my mom that I'd be staying there for a while since it was closer to the hospital. After some time, my father passed away after his battle with illness. He left this world peacefully, as if he were asleep. My mom and I cried so much it felt like we'd run out of tears. But with funeral arrangements to be made, we couldn't dwell in our sorrow. I called Robert to inform him about my father's passing and the funeral date. Although I still wanted a divorce, I felt obligated to let him know since we were technically still married. So, your dad finally passed away. Sorry for your loss. I don't feel like attending the funeral. Too much of a hassle, he said casually. Despite my suspicions, Robert showed no signs of sadness. I had hoped he would at least come to the funeral, but it seemed even that was asking too much. Seeing his indifference, I not only lost any remaining feelings for him, but began to detest him. I regretted marrying a man who concealed such a cruel side. Do whatever you want, I replied, surprised by my own coldness. Why are you so upset? Oh, and I'm curious about the inheritance, Robert taunted. Unable to bear his mocking laughter, I cut him off and ended the call. In the end, Robert didn't show up for my father's funeral. Some called him heartless, but I believed it was for the best that he stayed away and didn't tarnish my father's final farewell. In truth, I felt relieved he didn't attend. After the funeral, a family meeting was arranged, including my mother and me, to discuss the inheritance. There were talks about who would receive what, but since my father had made decisions before his passing, everything was settled smoothly. Feeling like I had finally found some closure, I decided to head back home. But as soon as Robert saw me, he dropped a bombshell. Hey, it's been a while. I've decided to use the $1 million you inherited to renovate the family house. What? I was so taken aback that my voice faltered. I hadn't discussed the inheritance situation with Robert. How did he know about the $1 million? And why was he planning to spend it on home renovations? Still reeling from the shock, I asked Robert, "What do you mean? I have no idea about any large sum of money." With a chuckle, Robert responded, "I had a chat with your mom. I may have nudged her a bit, hinting that if she didn't spill the beans about the inheritance, I might consider divorce. She quickly spilled everything." It turned out that Robert had coerced my mother into revealing details about the inheritance. "You're despicable, threatening my mother like that just to find out." "That's a low blow," I exclaimed, my voice rising without me even realizing it. "I don't care. The renovations are already underway with that $1 million. You did what?" "Yep, lucky me for snagging that cash." "Good thing we're still hitched," Robert retorted smugly. While I was preoccupied with funeral arrangements and other tasks, Robert had already arranged for the renovations using the inheritance. I was speechless. You're obsolete now, but I'm feeling generous. You have two options: move in with my folks or file for divorce. Robert's smirk was downright repulsive. I sighed deeply and replied calmly, I choose divorce, but I won't regret it. Robert laughed dismissively, as if I'd regret anything. With that, he handed me a lawyer's business card. From now on, we'll handle everything through this lawyer. And don't forget to transfer the inheritance to my account, he added. Silently, I packed my belongings and left. Even as I walked out the door, Robert kept reminding me, don't forget about the inheritance. When I recounted everything to my mother, she seemed taken aback. She hadn't realized how strained things were between Robert and me. She also apologized for divulging details about the inheritance to Robert. It's all right, Mom. I should have told you everything. But Robert threatening you is the worst part. I reassured her, then asked if I could stay at our family home until I found a new place. She readily agreed. The following day, my phone buzzed incessantly with calls from Robert, all of which I ignored. Eventually, Robert showed up at my parents' house, ringing the doorbell persistently and causing a commotion. Despite my attempts to ignore him, Robert refused to leave and continued to shout loudly outside. Hey, open the door. I know you're in there. Feeling overwhelmed by his aggressive behavior, my mother suggested, Caroline, maybe you should talk to him to prevent any further disturbance for the neighbors. It might not lead to anything productive, but if things escalate, we'll call the police. All right, I understand, I replied reluctantly. With Robert showing no signs of leaving, I reluctantly opened the door partially, leaving the security chain latched. This is getting out of hand, Caroline. When are you transferring that $1 million? I can't afford the renovations without it, Robert shouted, attempting to shake the door and break the chain. Remaining calm, I responded to Robert, it's under consideration. Confused by my reply, Robert looked puzzled and asked, what do you mean, under consideration? I confronted him with the truth, saying, what I inherited was my father's vacation house. It's not in cash, so I can't transfer it to you. Robert's eyes widened in shock. But then, I had something that surprised me too. How did you manage to secure a $1 million renovation contract? Usually, they wouldn't agree without proof of funds. Well, I have a relative who owns a construction company. I mentioned I'd be receiving $1 million soon, so they skipped the usual checks, Robert explained, looking stunned. If that's the case, remember when I warned you before we decided to divorce? I reminded him. I did warn you properly. You've got to be kidding me. I already paid a deposit of $3,000. I planned to pay the rest in installments, but now I can't. What am I supposed to do? Robert panicked, continuing to fuss. The wife's property is the husband's too, right? Even if it's not in cash. Hand over that $1 million vacation home. We're still married, right? You've got it all wrong, Robert. Inherited property isn't shared, it's solely mine. Not a cent goes to you. And just so we're clear, we're not a couple anymore. We're total strangers, I asserted firmly. Upon hearing this, Robert's expression shifted from despair to rage, his face turning beet red as he began screaming louder than ever. Stop playing games. I'm calling off the divorce. Give me the inheritance right now, he demanded, attempting to grab me through the door gap. Witnessing the altercation, my mother swiftly dialed the police. Robert withdrew his arm upon hearing her on the phone, but then smirked unexpectedly. I'm done with you, he sneered before fleeing the scene. After he left, the police arrived. While the doorbell camera footage seemed to suggest action would be taken, the officers advised me to prioritize my safety and to avoid engaging with Robert in the future, regardless of the circumstances. They instructed me to keep the doors locked and, if necessary, pretend I wasn't home. 3 days later, I received another call from the police regarding the documentation concerning my father's real estate. When I returned to my parents' house after divorcing Robert, I had put the real estate documents in my bag, only to discover they had vanished. Upon being informed that the documents were found, I headed to the police station where Robert was unexpectedly present. To my shock, It turned out that Robert was the thief who stole the documents. As I demanded an explanation, exasperated, Robert wore a sullen expression and muttered, "You thought there might be cash in my bag since I inherited $1 million, right? So when you went through my stuff, you stumbled upon some important-looking documents related to the inheritance and decided to take them." Robert explained that he hadn't examined the documents closely at the time. It was only after learning from me that the $1 million wasn't in cash, but a vacation house that he realized the documents he took were the property title of that house. Later, Robert, assuming that selling the property title would convert the inheritance into cash, took it to a real estate agent, accompanied by my in-laws, to initiate the selling process. However, upon my arrival, the realtor informed me that since the title was still in my father's name, they couldn't proceed with the sale. As the inheritance division discussion had just taken place, I was in the process of finding a notary to transfer the title to my name. Even if the inheritance had been finalized, the property would still be under my name, making it difficult for Robert to sell it without my consent. In frustration, I demanded that they purchase the property since it belonged to my father-in-law. Their response was to call the police on me, likely due to Robert's aggressive behavior, which raised suspicion among the employees. As I stood in shock, Robert began making absurd claims to the police officer. "I was just trying to sell it on her behalf. I didn't steal anything. I haven't done anything wrong. Please let me go," he pleaded, contradicting his earlier admission of taking the documents. Remaining composed, I clarified to the officer, "That's not true. I didn't ask him to sell anything. He stole it on his own. Plus, the documents he took were just copies, not the originals. Even if he tried, he couldn't have sold them." "You set me up. Don't play games with